Rev up your engines! In the effort to save you money, but at the same time save you from having a bad repair, I'm going to tell you what parts you should never buy for your Toyota and some parts that you should buy. Now, as car parts get more and more expensive, a lot of people during repairs, they want to go for the bottom line and buy the lowest price that they can buy for a replacement part. Now, sometimes cheap parts actually are cheap and you don't want to use them. But sometimes they're okay. Now, most Toyotas don't break down all that much, right? So let's say your car is 17 years old, like this, or 10 or 12 years old, right? And if a part breaks for the first time, say it's a 15-year-old car with a 15-year-old part. That previous part lasted 15 years, which is pretty good, right? OEM is excellent. It's going to last you a really long time. If you're a cheapskate like me and you plan on driving it another 10 or 15 years, you're better off buying an OEM part because it's going to last. But let's say you don't plan on keeping it all that long. Sometimes aftermarket parts are okay. Here's a perfect example. This is a mass airflow sensor on this 07 matrix. It measures how much air goes into the engine and gives other information such as temperature and stuff to the computer. This particular one is $158 at the Toyota dealer, the original one. Okay, I looked on Amazon. They sell one for $29.99. That's a Chinese knockoff. And they also sell the same one, the Denso one that's in this car, for $85.95. Now in this case, I would go for the Nippon Denso original one, but it's half the price on Amazon than it is buying it from a Toyota dealer. I would not go for the $29 one that's Chinese knockoffs, because realize this. This Denso, you can see the same thing, it's upside down, Denso. This Denso mass airflow sensor has to completely sync with the main computer. They're very complex machines, and if they're off a little, it'll run like crap. Every single Denso mass airflow sensor I ever had to buy for a Toyota, it wasn't that many. You can often clean them with mass airflow sensor cleaner, so try cleaning them first. But when I had to replace them because they were flooded or wrecked or something, or somebody got in there and screwed around with it and shorted the wiring out, every single Denso one I bought worked perfectly fine. But I had many customers trying to fix their own cars. They tried those $29 ones, the cheap Chinese ones. Don't buy those. And the hilarious thing is sometimes you don't even save that much money, right? Go to the auto parts store. They used to be discount auto parts stores. Now, sometimes they're even more expensive than the original equipment stuff. Always look it up. You can look it up with your phone real easy to see what the real ones cost at the dealer, and then compare it to what you're buying and what you're getting. In the case of these sensors, stick to original equipment. You don't have to buy from the Toyota dealer, as long as it's Denso and it's got the same serial number. The Denso company has made them, and it's perfectly fine to do that. But don't use the real cheap ones unless you're a riverboat gambler rolling those dice. And since you do have a guarantee from places like AutoZone, O'Reilly, right? Maybe you're selling the car. So, heck, try the $29 one. If it works and you're selling the car, what do you care? But if you're going to keep it, stick to the Denso. Now, let's say your radiator's going bad, okay? This is a replacement radiator. Chinese one, you can't even read the name. Starts with D-Y-E, the rest is kind of faded away. But it fit, it worked perfectly fine, and it cost me $89 online. The original equipment Toyota radiator cost $479, okay? I have been buying Chinese replacement radiators for all kinds of cars for the last 4 decades. And other than occasionally they don't fit perfectly and I might have to modify the mount that holds them in, they all worked perfectly fine. I didn't have any problems with them. And that price differential makes total sense to buy an aftermarket one. Can't take batteries. You can see I got a Rural King battery in here. And you know why? Because of price and reliability. The original equipment one is long gone. It lasted 5 years. Nothing to complain about these days, right? But the battery before this was from AutoZone. It lasted 5 years. It lasted the same length of time as the original equipment Toyota did. You can't complain about that, right? But I go to AutoZone to replace it. The prices in the last 5 years have gone so high that they wanted over $200 for the battery that fits in this car. So I went to Rural King, did a little research. Their batteries are made in the United States. Cost me 50 bucks for this battery. We'll see how long it lasts. It's only been in about 6 months now, but my grandson buys them all the time. They're decent batteries, right? They're not top of the line, but if this battery costs 4 times less than the AutoZone battery, so it only lasts 3 years. Well, it costs 4 times less, and I only got 5 years out of the AutoZone one, which is now over $200. Now let's delve into the engine, take the stupid beauty cover off. I don't know why I leave it on, but heck, came with a stupid thing. It's easy to get off. Now these are the ignition coils that fire the spark plug. Computer sends impulses and it makes the spark. This baby's 18 years old. This is still the original ignition coils. It runs perfectly fine. Eventually everything wears out, and let's say one of your coils goes out. These coils are 129 bucks at the Toyota dealer. You can get them a lot cheaper at discount auto stores, but generally they are Chinese knockoffs, and I don't advise it. Plus, the discount auto parts stores aren't that discount anymore. At AutoZone, they wanted over 100 bucks just for their cheap Chinese knockoff. You might as well buy the original ones, right? It's called newparts.com, and they have the Denso ignition coils with 4 spark plugs for 185 bucks, all 4, versus almost that for just 1 coil. Go ahead and get it. You're better off changing all 4, because of course if one's worn, the others are worn. If you got a brand new one and 3 old ones, the new one's probably going to fire a little bit quicker than the other ones, and even if it's off by 1/1000th of an inch or something, it might not run perfectly. So you don't have to go to Toyota and spend what, 600 something bucks. 180, you get all 4 and the spark plugs, and they're Denso too. There's a tremendous markup at the dealership for parts, needless to say. And when it comes to something as important as the fuel injectors, 1, 2, 3, 4, there's one hiding under there, you can't see it. There it is down there. It is so critical not to use cheap Chinese knockoffs on those. You want to use the same company who made them, Denso. And you got to make sure they're exactly the same. They're set for a certain flow rate. And if they don't come with seals, you have to buy the original equipment seals. I've had so many people bring me cars, they're leaking gas. And I'll say, your injectors are leaking. They say, well, we just replaced all 4. And I said, did you use OEM Toyota? No. They either used the old ones over, or they bought some cheap Chinese knockups from an auto parts store and put them on, and that's why they're leaking. Sure, you want to save money, but truthfully, Toyotas have such great designs. At least the older ones, up until a few years ago when they're making some mistakes. Those injectors last so long. When I had to change them, usually the cars had 400,000 miles on them. If you got that much mileage out of the fuel injectors, please put the same ones back in. They're well made. And there's nothing worse than thinking you found out what's wrong with the car. You replace the injectors, and it either runs worse or it still runs bad, and you start scratching your head. Well, because you bought cheap injectors or the wrong seals, that they're leaking, they're sucking air, whatever. Those are such critical parts. You want to use the original equipment wherever you buy them. I mean, like I say, you don't have to go to the dealer. There are lots of people that sell the Denso ones because, of course, on an older vehicle, people stockpile stuff. And as they get older, more cars go off the road. They got a bunch of the ones lying around that nobody bought because they don't break much in Toyotas. So you can often find aftermarket for older cars at a decent price. And of course, always use your head and your phone, for example. Brake rotor's warped on this because my wife has a tendency to slam the brakes on a highway. So the brake rotor's warped. So I thought, I'm going to use original equipment because my wife's really hard on them. I went online, and because it's an old car and a Toyota dealer somewhere in the United States wanted to get rid of their old stock, I got these rotors for only 48 bucks a piece. And these are brand new original equipment ones at the Toyota dealer. And they even had a deal if you spent more than 100 bucks, you got free shipping. So I bought a PCV valve too, and it didn't even cost me anything to ship. Who would have thought I would have got a good price? But with an older Toyota, they got old stock stuff they want to get rid of. Hey, why not check around? PCV valves, positive crankcase ventilation. This PCV valve's hidden inside here. Only, and I mean only, use OEM Toyota PCV valves. Sure, you can go to the auto parts store. They might have them for 8, 9, 10 bucks, right? But they have certain pressure they work at. And those Chinese knockoffs are often garbage. They either won't suck enough, and then it'll blow the seals on your engine from too much pressure in the crankcase, or they suck too much, it's the same as a vacuum leak, and then you will get codes for like vacuum leak on your car, or you'll start burning oil because instead of sucking just the vapor, if it's open too much, it will suck raw oil and then it'll burn oil and create a mess. This car's $8.93 at the Toyota dealer. They charge more than that for this Chinese knockoffs at the auto parts stores. So that is a total no-brainer. Whenever you find the price of a part for your car at the Toyota dealer is cheaper than what these aftermarket clowns are selling, go to the Toyota dealer. It just doesn't make any sense. The problem with these discount auto parts stores, they're not that discount anymore other than the quality of a bunch of the stuff that they sell. And when else should you use OEM parts? Transmission fluid. And here's why. When you drain the automatic transmission fluid, take the drain bolt out the pan, drain it out, right? Sometimes less than 1/3 of the fluid in the system actually drains out. So when you're changing the fluid, basically you're diluting it with new clean fluid. There's still a ton of the old fluid left in on the modern ones. Heck, sometimes you only get 2 quarts of fluid coming out when you change them. And those modern ones that don't have dipsticks, yeah, I know it's a stupid idea. They're just trying to rip us all off. This has got a dipstick, a lot easier to work on, right? So you can maintain it better. With those, sometimes 80% or more of the fluid stays in the transmission. So you're just diluting it, and if you mix another fluid with it, no one has any idea what additives the other fluids have in them. Let's face the facts. You don't know. And again, this isn't that expensive. You know, I bought it online again. Now the dealer wanted $8 a quart, so I bought mine from Amazon. And it was $5.99 a quart. You can see it's the Toyota fluid, right? Now you're not saving all that much, so I mean, hey, just go to the Toyota dealer, buy it there. It really isn't all that different price unless their price changes, right? And you consider you're only going to do this every 30, 40,000 miles, so it's not that big of a deal. But you don't want to mix your old fluid with some crazy new one that who knows what additives, what's in it. This is the same exact stuff that came with this car. Now this is Toyota T4, that's what this takes. You have to look it up for your own car because there's various fluids that they use, and if you have a CVT transmission, believe you me, you want to only use the Toyota CVT fluid. You don't want to chance it with some other brand. Now when it comes to brake pads, I personally prefer Akebono brake pads. Ceramic, made in Japan, they're quiet, they last even longer, and I'm more satisfied with them than I was with the original equipment ones. Now if you buy cheap ones, the problem is they often make noise, squeak, sometimes they grind, right? Now, if you don't care about noise, in an older car especially, they'll work perfectly fine, but they'll make a lot of noise. But I do have to warn you, you have to use quality brake pads on many modern cars because they have all these traction control systems and they're set up for a certain type of brake pad. And if you change the consistency of it, I've had people use the cheap brake pads on them, the brake light starts coming on because it screws with the ABS and the traction control system. So if you got one of those cars, really, you're better off just sticking to OEM. Yes, they're expensive. And yes, it's a ripoff. A set of brake pads probably costs 10 cents to make, right? And they were $100-something for them. But hey, it's your safety, so you may as well go out. But like I say, some guys disagree with me. I don't always use OEM. If I can get Akebono, they're not cheap pads. But as far as I'm concerned, they're even better than the original equipment ones. Now when it comes to struts, original equipment are usually excellent. Especially in Toyotas, I've seen some go a couple 100,000 miles, they're still going okay. Especially in light vehicles like this Matrix. But when they do wear out, starts bouncing all over the place, let me warn you something. Don't buy those stupid quick struts where the whole assembly is there. You just unbolt the strut, you put the whole assembly in. Now sure, you don't have to take it apart with a spring compressor, put the new strut cartridge, put it all back together again. You just bolt it on, bolt it off, an easy job. But most quick struts are junk. I used to let people bring them in and I'd say, okay, I'll put them on your car. Often, I'm done, I get it on, they said, the car rides worse now than it did with the old worn out struts. And I explained, that's because quick struts are junk. I will no longer put them on people's cars because of that. These things are designed by engineers. The springs have to be a certain diameter of strong steel. The damping has to be set just right. It has to be perfectly made. The quick struts are not. But if you plan on keeping your car, stay away from quick struts. Now, a lot of Toyotas come with KYB struts, so you can buy KYB aftermarket struts, the same company, right? There's nothing wrong with that. I often use KYB struts and they work perfectly fine. But even with them, I do not use the quick struts. They're cheaper made. Now, one part that I never ever advise using aftermarket is a power steering pump, especially with Toyotas. Their pumps generally last so long that if you go 200,000, 300,000, 400,000 miles, just buy another one and put it on. Because that cheap Chinese aftermarket stuff is just garbage. Those things put up over 1,500 pounds per square inch pressure. And speaking of the pressure, I won't use remanufactured or rebuilt ones either. They are terrible. They got a broken pump. They supposedly fix it. Half the time all they do is put seals on the thing. They will whine. They will groan. They will bind. It is such a crucial part if it does go out, if you don't want to spend the money that it costs to buy a new Toyota pump. And they are very expensive. I'm not arguing that. Go to a junkyard, put a used one on. They last so long, you're probably better off putting a used pump on a Toyota than you are putting on a rebuilt one. I have had so many problems in the past, I won't even use rebuilt ones for those anymore. But like I say, they generally last so long that even if you get a leak, say the hose is leaking, you replace the hose and the pump was making noise because it's low on fluid, usually with a Toyota, you put a new line on, you're not going to have any problems at all. And if you just put the line on and the old one was groaning because it had air in it, most of the time the Toyotas drive around a day or two full of fluid and the noise goes away. They're so well made. So you're going to have to replace one. Put a new one in if you're planning on keeping the car. But when it comes to a lot of body parts, who cares as long as they fit? Now, check it out, okay? These are aftermarket struts that hold the trunk open. And it's a big trunk. It's heavy, right? From a company called Strong Arm. I've had it on them for over a decade. I've had no problems whatsoever. And best of all, they cost 4 times less than the Toyota ones did. You know, sometimes there's things you're not going to care about like that. Same thing with fenders. Hey, as long as they fit, they're going to paint the stupid things anyways. Who really cares? Some parts you can buy non-OEM to save money. Some of them, you should never do it. But if you're going to buy OEM, look around. You can often find a better price than at the dealer, or as in the case of the new brake rotors on this thing, I bought them at a dealer, I don't know, it was Indiana or someplace. I just went online, they were getting rid of their old stock, and I got 2 of them, and they're only 49 bucks a piece for the original equipment one. So, you never know. Shows you yet another advantage of having an older car. There's a lot of good parts out there that, hey, how many really old cars are still out there? They got parts left, they want to get rid of them. You can get a good price, even at the Toyota dealer sometimes. So if you never want to miss another one of my new car repair videos, remember to ring that bell.